Now, the next area on our journey is the CMD. So I mentioned this before, and we've seen a little bit of it from within the context of a ticket, but there's more to the assets capability. So as we go into this, a couple of quick notes. One, we organize our asset data into object schemas. So the reason we do this is one, for logical grouping of our assets, as well as for security. So I can basically have object schemas like my IT employee assets that are only accessible for, say, my service desk. They need to know what laptop you have in order to fulfill your request faster. However, things like my servers, routers, those may be within the purview of my operations team, and that service desk staff doesn't need access to it. So I can actually have a separate schema that just has access for my data center operators. Okay. So if we go look at what one of these schemas look like, all of this is fully configurable. I can define as many object types as I like. This is just one example where we're tracking IT employee assets. So I can see things like, what are all the laptops that we've issued to my users? Within any of these objects, I can go drill in and see a lot of the details that we saw earlier within that particular ticket, as well as additional details for them. For each asset, as I look at it, I can see any open issues for that particular ticket asset to tell me is this a problem child or whatnot. I also have a full audit trail of that particular asset to see what changes have been made, who made that change, what was the old value as well. So I've got a nice audit trail for each CI, and I can fully track its life cycle, financial metrics, as well as relationships to other elements. Now, as I mentioned before, this is all fully configurable. So what does that mean? It means that for one, I have the ability to ad hoc just come in and create new object types. So maybe I want to track we already have tablets over here. So let's track mice as an example. I can define what kind of icon it has, where it lives within this tree, and whether or not it inherits attribute data from its parent. So we just created mice as an example here. And from here, I can define whatever attributes I want to capture for it. So simply going into the attribute view, I can define attributes, what type of data we want to capture, whether those are select lists or whatnot. That can also include relationship information. For example, I can relate this mouse over to a laptop simply by defining an attribute that will be of type object. And we'll use laptop over here. And I can also describe that relationship, whether it's a technical, if it's a dependency, if it's a financial relationship, like maybe the contracts for a system, I can add those in. So now we've added that relationship. And what that means is now if I go back to my objects, create an object, I can simply name my object and associate it with the laptop. All done very quickly. I didn't have to build out a blueprint. I didn't have to do a scan that takes 8 hours. I simply made that modification. To give you other examples of what these object schemas can look like, if I go look at a more granular technical infrastructure like a data center, we can get very granular down to tracking all of my hosts, as well as what applications are installed on those systems. What licenses have we tracked? So this is a great example of non-technical data that can be brought into the system, including things like contracts, people data, as well as tracking like the operating systems or even like what databases we have running our systems. Now, we've been looking at very IT-centric views so far, and it doesn't have to remain that way. For example, I could have the customer support object schema where I can track all of my customers, for example. And within each customer, I can track what products are they currently licensed for? When does their contract expire? Who is their primary contact? All of this data can be leveraged within service requests or incidents, as well as through our automation platform. So we can define activities like I want to have an outreach for customers before their support agreements expire. Let's get ahead of those. Let's track certificates before they expire and make sure those get renewed and don't cause an incident just because they expired. So a lot of potential through the assets configuration. And it's all highly configurable. So if I go look at a object schema, we do have import processes that can be fully extended through plugins from our marketplace, which we'll see here in a little bit, as well as the ability to define your own connectors as well. So I can come in and just define what type of import I'm performing. From there, we'll just do a CSV. Simply tell us like the delimiter, drag and drop the file if that's available, and then we map out the attributes. Now, to see what that mapping looks like, we choose first what objects we're bringing in. And for each of those, I'll take the host. It's a simple choose from the data source field to what is the destination field within the CMDB. You can also identify whether our primary keys to make sure we're doing lookups to update assets versus creating new ones to make sure we've got a clean CMDB. So very easy to bring in asset data and maintain that asset data over the long term.